All right, it's a minute after 11, and I would like to thank you on behalf of QCM Technologies for taking a little bit of time out of your day to join us, for us to give you a little bit of education and some background on Microsoft 365 subscription licensing. So if you're currently utilizing Office 365 or any of those Microsoft subscriptions that are out there, then this is definitely something that you want to know and understand how these things work. We will also, if you're not there and you do need some help getting there, this is actually a good place to start as well. So you kind of learn how things go. All right. So today's agenda is really an easy one. I'm going to do some introductions. I'm going to talk about Microsoft's licensing journey. I'm going to talk about the key changes that the Microsoft 365 platform has gone through over the past year or so now. I'm going to talk about some pricing changes. I'm going to have a discussion about how you should go about thinking for your business as it relates to the license subscriptions that you're utilizing, how you purchase, when you purchase, things like that. Then I'm also going to talk about open licensing migrations. So those are like perpetual licenses you might have. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A at the end. All right, so to get started with, those of you who do not know me, my name is Stephen Thrain. I'm the Director of Technical Services here at QCM Technologies, and we're in Scottsdale, Arizona as our headquarter base. Tim Kinnerup is our VP of Business Operations and Sales, and he's also on the call as well. And we have some other QCM employees that are on the call as well. Thank you for your time, and thanks for taking a few minutes. The first thing that I want to make sure that everyone's aware of is that Microsoft is no longer calling their cloud tenant Office 365. We've called it that since about 2010, 2011 timeframe when it first came out. But they have basically tried to market that name out of the picture and are now calling it Microsoft 365. And there's a number of reasons for that. We'll kind of walk through that here in a second. So anytime I talk about Microsoft 365 today, in reality, it is referring to what you used to know as Office 365, plus all the enhancements that they've made to the platform. And there are a number of those. All right, let's talk a little bit about Microsoft's journey. Microsoft started a long time ago, maybe before you even started working with PCs, for sure. 1975, their desire was to put a Windows computer in every home. So think about that, 1975. Bill Gates, Paul Allen kind of kicked that out when they started with MS-DOS back in the day. In 1978, they actually made their first $1 million, and then they relocated to Bellevue, Washington, which is where Bill Gates and Paul Allen had lived at the time. And that didn't really end up being the end location where they are today in Redmond, but it's pretty close. In 1991, Microsoft Word 2.0 came out. And why that's important to me specifically is that I got to sit down with Bill Gates for about 15 minutes in 91 at Comdex when he was announcing Word 2.0, and got to talk to him just one-on-one. And during that conversation, he was really smart, and he really thought future-based. It was hugely impactful from that perspective. But what he told me on that day that still resonates with me to this day is that he expected subscriptions pricing and subscription type delivery of software from Microsoft will be a reality. That was 1991. Here we are, umpteen years later, and the truth of his vision is definitely out there, not only for his product sets, but for all kinds of product sets all across the world from a software perspective. 1995, 90% of the personal computers in the whole world ran some sort of Microsoft software, whether it was an operating system or an application. That's a lot of PCs and things that were running Microsoft products in a short span of about 20 years. In 94, there was this antitrust action because Microsoft got a little bit overzealous and started integrating the browser, Internet Explorer at the time, into their operating system, and a number of other upstart companies really didn't like that very much. Mozilla Firefox was probably one of the ones. Netscape was another. Netscape no longer exists, as you probably all know. But it was a bunch of legal problems, and it led to some things in the European Union, and Microsoft thought that they were going to be in a lot of big trouble, so they made the decision to split the OS and the browser, and that's the world we still live in today. In 1995, Windows 95 was released, as well as their separate Internet Explorer. So think about that, 1995 Internet Explorer, and we're so happy to have it gone now. 2000, leadership change happened with Microsoft. Bill Gates resigned, retired, however you'd like to look at that, and it moved over to Steve Ballmer. They implemented, or tried to implement, subscription pricing at the time, and they were using a product family called Licensing 6.0 and Software Assurance, which was subscription-based support and updates for your software. That was hard to purchase. You had to go through a distributor, a partner, or directly from Microsoft, and it was very painful. 2001, Windows XP was released, and we still have some companies out there today that still running Windows XP for various reasons, but that's been a long time going. The next critical point in Microsoft's journey was 2011, where they introduced Office 365 and launched that. And that really was a game changer for them and for everybody else in the free world, if you will, where we could purchase licenses and deal with all of the Office product family that we had been using for some time, but could be consumed in a different way, right? So 2011, keep that in mind. 2012, Microsoft introduces the Surface and entered the tablet market, and that's still a very viable product family for them today. Lots of people do that and use that today. 2014, Nadella took over. Ballmer retired out. He went off and did some things with basketball, and even though he's a well-liked person and did a lot of things for Microsoft and very well respected, Nadella has come into his play. In 2015, they released Windows 10. And if you know today, Windows 10 is still out there. It's still running, albeit it's later releases of Windows 10. Some of the early releases of Windows 10 have been deprecated, and Microsoft is no longer doing support for those. So it's important that we as consumers, especially if we're still running Windows 10, make sure we're on later releases of Windows 10, not the early releases, because there are no security updates or critical patches for those any longer. And then 2022, Microsoft had their first price increase for their Office 365 products family. So from 2011 to 2022, the prices remained constant and they didn't change. 2022, last year, they made a couple of small changes to pricing. And then mid last year, they announced this new Commerce Edition, this NCE was announced from them, and some other pricing changes happened. And that's why you're here today, is to kind of learn a little bit more about what that might mean to you as a customer of Microsoft. And thank you for that. All right, new commerce. Let's talk about some of the changes. New commerce is really a platform for Microsoft to allow consumers to get their subscriptions. So it's an online portal. You can go log into that. And if you've already got a Microsoft tenant out there, that's basically a component of where you're at. You can go under your billing section and you can purchase your licenses right there from the portal. If you're buying them through, you're licensing through a cloud service provider, someone like QCM as an example, then you'll basically ask us to push those things in for you, and then we'll take care of doing all the licensing and the administration of the licensing, the application of the licensing, things like that. It's also a place where they can manage Azure at the same place at the same time from the same portal. And they didn't used to be able to do that. They were all separate products. So they've kind of unified all that together to what they call the NCE, or the new commerce experience. Almost all the products that Microsoft has out there today, they're subscription based, are in the new commerce edition. A lot of the seat-based cloud offerings that we know and use on a regular basis, the primary ones being Microsoft 365, i.e. the old Office 365. If you're a Dynamics platform, a Dynamics customer, the Dynamics 365 product family and all of the add-ons and so forth are in the new commerce edition. If you're into Power and data analysis and doing some of the Power BI, all of those licensings and subscriptions can also be acquired through the new commerce experience. And the latest thing that they're doing is including the ability to do subscription-based model for Windows 365, i.e. Windows 11, Windows 10 subscriptions that will continue to roll with updates and the 2.5 updates that they typically do every year. Those can be consumed on a monthly basis instead of outright purchasing a Windows license directly. So that's a new component that they've added to the new Commerce Edition as well. So those are all things to think about, how you consume your products, what they are, and where you can get them from. Here's the three major changes that have happened for what I'll call the new Commerce Edition and new Commerce Experience, and what it might mean to me as a consumer of those products. So number one, there is only a 72-hour cancellation now. So in the past, we could purchase a product, we could buy the product at an annual basis, which would give us a little bit of a discount, or we could pay for it at a monthly base, which was a little bit of an uplift in charge, not a lot, but a little bit. And then we could make adjustments whenever we wanted to. So say, for instance, I buy an annual license for one of my users, and that user leaves us for another organization and I don't replace them, and say maybe that's 6 months into that annual purchase, I could cancel that subscription with Microsoft. Microsoft would look at it and say, okay, pro rata, you've used 7 months of that license, so I'm going to refund on your credit card the remaining 5 months. So that concept does not exist any longer. So that is gone. There's no pro rata at all, with one exception. I'll come back to that in a few minutes. Typically, the licensing is monthly, 1 year or 3 year now, and that's basically it. So we'll come back to those items and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Second item is there's no reduction of seats during the term of your license. So if you purchase 100 seats of M365 Business Basic as an example, and you decide partway through the year that you need to take 10 of those seats off because something's happened to my business, you're not allowed to do that. You're basically paying for that full commitment of 1 year. At the point your year comes up, you can actually reduce the seats at that particular point in time. And then if you choose that you want to do something different, you can go to what we did in the past, which is a monthly term. You pay monthly. You can make adjustment every single month, not within the month, but you can make a change during the month. The challenge with that is there's a hefty price increase for folks that want to go the monthly term. The reason that they're doing that is they're trying to get us all to change our behavior and decide on how to do these kinds of things for our business, but do it on an annual basis that provides both an easier license management platform for us as users and customers, but also it brings in probably the key thing, steady income, and it doesn't cause a lot of disruption in the licensing change management that Microsoft would have to do for the billions of people that utilize their product family. So those are the real three key changes. 72-hour cancellation on the initial purchase, so that's only a few days. No pro rata based on your term. You cannot reduce the seats within your term, only at the end of your term. There is a monthly license, a monthly subscription, but you're going to pay a premium price for that as well. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so here's some examples of some pricing changes that have happened. So Microsoft 365, the Business Basic, used to be $5. These are MSRP prices. Your price may vary depending on who you're getting it from. But the Business Basic license was $5. Now it's $6. And if you kind of look at the little disclaimer underneath or little point underneath, that's a 20% increase. It's $1. It's not a lot of money for the most part. Microsoft Business Premium went from 20 to 22. That's $2, if you will. Obviously percentage wise, it's a little bit more, 10%, if you will, from that perspective. 365E1 went from $8 to $10, so it's a $2 increase. 365E3, which is a very common license, uplifted $3. 365E5, which includes phones and some other functionality, some premium licensing components that come with that, lifted $3, and then 365E3 listed $4 as well. So all of those pricing changes happened between last March and this year. Those are the primary ones that have changed. Even though they've changed some of these, they've also added some other benefits. So I'll give you an example. If you purchase an E3 license and you had Teams before, and you had a Teams phone component added to a toll-free number added to your Teams license so that you could have people call into a toll-free number or have your own number on your Teams meetings, that is now included for no additional charge with an E3 license or an E5 license. So if you purchase those licenses and you were paying for the phone component before, you still can have the phone component, but now I've reduced my cost by what the phone component cost was. So it might be a wash for you if you were doing that from that perspective, albeit the prices did increase. There's a few other products that changed in price as well, but these are the general ones that I've outlined that most folks use pretty regularly from that perspective. Okay. All right, so let's talk about things that you want to consider as you're going through this, right? So the big, my Microsoft dollar considerations, if you will, are the license costs to the customer, to you guys, how you can cancel, what happens when you have to reduce seats, and those things all come around all kinds of business things, right? So staffing needs, a lot of companies have a consistent workforce. So if you do, then annual licensing or even 3-year licensing might be something that you consider. For folks that have seasonal workers, that becomes a lot different prospect, because in the old days, pre-NCE, we could go ahead and purchase a license at an annual basis. And then when our seasonal time was over, we would cancel those subscriptions, we'd get pro rata back. And it wasn't a big difference in our business from that perspective. However, today, that's not really an option. So when you have seasonal workers, we have to kind of think about how we should handle that. Do I purchase an annual license to keep the price down? Do my seasonal workers, do they exist for the majority of the year? Do they exist for a small portion of the year? Let's say you're somebody that is a tax organization, right? And you hire on a bunch of extra CPAs for a couple, 2 or 3 months during tax season, but yet they're going to need the Office licensing or the Windows licensing for that matter. Do you pay for those monthly? Do you pay for those annually? How do what do you do from a financial perspective to make sure that you're getting the best deal for your organization, right? So those are things we have to think about. In addition, contractors, if you bring contractors into play in your environment and you're providing them those licenses, is the contractor there for a long extended period of time? Is it an annual contract? Is it project-based where maybe they're only there for a portion of the year? Are they there for multi-year? So all of those kind of things come into play. So those are the things we need to think about. I'll give you some examples here in a second, some more examples in a second. The other primary thing I want you to think about is what I'll call mix and match. And mix and match means that I can purchase some annual licenses, and I can purchase some monthly licenses, and I can purchase some 3-year licenses. So there's nothing that says I have to pick all the same license for all of my employees for all of my subscriptions. So that's really kind of a key picture here. Now, what does that mean to me at the end? It means I'm still going to have to do some financial analysis, and I'm going to have to figure out what model works best for my business based on some of these concepts, right? Can't lower, can't cancel. I can't get a pro rata back from that perspective. So I have to kind of look at the outcome from that. I already talked about a potential tax customer, right? Somebody that brings on some seasonal people, that kind of thing. If you're in hospitality, you might have the same kind of thing. If you're in healthcare, you might have the same kind of thing. You know, if you're a normal business that doesn't have a lot of turnover, this may not be that big of a deal for you from that perspective. But again, it's a matter of handling the license counts that you have in a way that's meaningful to your organization. So let me start off with what I'll call a greenfield customer. So somebody who's very new to Microsoft. They didn't have any subscription licenses before. They're starting on day one. They have a workforce of, say, 20 employees to get started. They go out and purchase an annual subscription for 20 licenses of the Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Okay, so they're going to pay upfront for an annual purchase for those employees. Okay, so now let's use the January 1st as the date of inception, if you will, from this, just to make it easy. So their January 1st of following year is the end of is the renewal for their new term. So if they want to make any adjustments on a reduction perspective, that's their opportunity to do that. It's just prior to that happening, that month right before. Okay, so that's where they can make that. They can make those changes. Okay, if they wait till after that period of time, they cannot make any of those changes. They can increase anytime you want to, but I can't reduce them. So that's important to know. If I have a 3-year term, because maybe my workforce doesn't change very much, and I do my 3-year term, I'm going to get the best pricing possible. But again, I will not be able to reduce my licensing for those accounts that I purchase for up to 3 years. So at the point where that term ends for that 3 years, so instead of 2023 going all the way to 2026, the first renewal time is my opportunity to reduce that. So I've got to keep those kinds of things in mind. If I have those 20 employees and say 18 of those employees are consistent, I'm always got to have 18 of them around, and 2 are interns or contractors or seasonal or those kind of things, then maybe my strategy would be to purchase 18 licenses at the annual. So that gives me the best for the single annual 1-year term, or 3-year if those don't change from that perspective, and then purchase those other 2 licenses on a monthly basis. Now I am going to get hit with a big uplift on that. That uplift from month to month is a 20% increase over the price that I showed you earlier. So if you were paying $6, it's a 20% increase on the $6 to go month to month. However, if I'm only keeping them for 3 months, it's probably worthwhile for me to take that hit and just purchase 3 months worth of those licenses versus the annual license. But if you kind of think about the math, if I'm keeping them for 9 months out of the year, then that 20% hit is too much, and it probably makes sense to just purchase an annual license for those kinds of folks as well. So those are the kinds of things that you have to think about, right? How does that affect my business? How does that affect my purchasing decisions and when I purchase? Okay, so now let's talk about the next part of this. I used a greenfield one as an example. So we're going to purchase 20 licenses at the beginning of the year. Those expire, those particular 20 expire at the end of December, beginning of January, the next year, okay? But during the year, we have some growth, and we add 5 more employees, and say that's in May. I purchased 5 more licenses in May. Those licenses are annual, but now they expire at the end of beginning of May the following year. So now I don't have anything that's co-termed together. And as I do this over time, it's going to even get more out of not in sync. They're not going to be all due at the same time. So those are challenges that we have to think about, and we have to watch for those end dates specifically for the licenses that we have. So if we do want to make reductions, we can make reductions at the appropriate time. So a couple of things to consider from this perspective. If you're purchasing your licenses yourself, then you have to go into your portal and pay attention to that. If you're not purchasing those licenses yourself and you are doing that through a CSP, so like QCM, QCM can provide you the expiration dates on each of the licenses you have, and they can help you make sure that you haven't made, if you're going to make any adjustments, we make them at the right time. so that you can control that and we don't miss those deadlines. So those are kinds of things you want to think about from that perspective. All right, so if you have questions later, we could talk about that in a second. Commitments. So commitments to Microsoft. This is really to Microsoft. The month-to-month, like I mentioned a second ago, they are a 20% increase over the normal annual price for that particular subscription. But with month-to-month, you can increase anytime. You can decrease, but you can only decrease at the end of the month. So it's a monthly commit. So I can't decrease in the middle of the month. If I do, I'm still paying for that month anyway. And then I just won't have that license available to me the following month. So if we use the example I threw out earlier, we have 20 employees, 18 of them are annual for the full year, and then 2 of them are the month to month, as an example. At the end of the 3rd month, if I wanted to get rid of one of those, I could drop the one license, and then the 4th month, I'm just paying for one month to month license from that perspective. But again, we have to pay attention to the term dates when those are going to renew, right? And then you can reassign that license to another user anytime. So what does this mean? This means if I have Freddie who's working for us and he's leaving, and I got Jill who comes in, I can reassign that license from Freddie to Jill, no cost to me, doesn't change any of my licensing parameters, anything along those lines. That subscription is still that subscription. It's not tied to the user. It's just a total count of the subscription licenses of the type that you have. Okay, so reassignment can happen anytime during the term, no issue. Annual commitment. So this is 1 year. It's price locked for 1 year. That also could be good, as an example, if Microsoft raised the price during your term. Your term is locked at whatever price you paid at the beginning of your term, and it won't adjust until after your term is over. So if you purchased 1 year and they came out and upped it $2 more, you're not going to be required to pay that until the next term if you choose to keep that license. So kind of keep that in mind. At any time, you can increase your license count. So you can add to the licenses that you currently have under 1 year. You can add 1 year, 3 year, month to month, whatever makes sense for you. You can reassign those licenses to other users at any time throughout the whole process of the term. And you can only decrease once, like I mentioned earlier, when the term is over. So the decrease is kind of the big negative, in my opinion, from the way it used to work before. Multi-year, 3-year type terms, I get to lock those prices in for 3 years. So if you feel that that's a good value for you, your core doesn't change very much, or maybe there's a certain number of your core that doesn't change very much, that might be an option for you to kind of think about from the pricing perspective, if you'd like. And then you can increase anytime during the term. You can add additional types of licenses or subscriptions. You can reassign them anytime. You can even reassign people from a 1 year subscription to a 3 year subscription, that kind of stuff as well. So those kinds of things can come into play. And again, you can only decrease once per term. So that would be at the end of that 3 year commitment from that perspective. Okay, so those are things to consider. Now, one of the things that you also need to consider is where you purchase your licenses. If you are purchasing them directly from Microsoft, and you're pay for an annual license, you're going to pay for that up front, and you'll pay for an annual, whatever that happens to be, when you purchase the license, and that's what you spend. If you're paying month to month, you'll pay that month to month up front, and then you can make those adjustments based on whether you increase it or decrease it or reassign it at the end of the month when that term is over. If you're purchasing it through a CSP, a cloud service provider like QCM, we have the option to still allow you to purchase an annual subscription, but we can invoice you or bill you monthly on that annual subscription. So we're allowed to do that, and we do that with most of the customers of ours that are purchasing Microsoft licenses through us today. That's the practice that we have. So we'll invoice your organization monthly for the licenses that you have, the counts that you have, the subscriptions that you have, albeit the commitment is really an annual 1 year term from that perspective. So these are things you need to think about. And as your renewals will be coming up at some point over this next year. QCM will reach out to the QCM folks and suggest that we talk about that, see what your commitment levels are, what kind of things that you are thinking about, what you might need to do so that you can, handle the financial part of your business accordingly. All right. Here's another concept. These are what we call perpetual licenses. Perpetual licenses are things like maybe a standalone copy of Visio. Maybe it's Windows Server license because you have a Windows Server. Maybe it could be a SQL license because you purchased a SQL license. So those licenses that are not subscription-based that you purchase that are a perpetual type of a license. So as an example, if today we're selling Windows Server 2022, that's the current version that's out there. So you have a new server that's going to be built. You want to build it via Windows 2022 server license. So you'll order that license. That license will be purchased pretty much the normal way that you used to purchase it in the past. However, it will not be delivered the way it's been delivered in the past. In the past, they could deliver it two ways. They could give you the license keys and a download link. That's not option anymore. Or you could have purchased it through what we call the open licensing program. And I put a little funny part behind that. The open license program is now closed. They do not do that anymore. Before you would log into their key portal and you would go see your licenses there. You could grab your keys. You could do your downloads from there. If you have licenses that are still in there that are not expired, you can still get them from that, but you can't add anything to the open license program. No new purchases, as you see as of December 31st, 2021. So it's been closed for a year. The way that works now is you purchase them through the cloud service provider or through your portal. And when you do that, Microsoft will actually put that subscription in your admin center under the billing and your products categories from the navigation bar that's on the left-hand side. And then inside of that, you'll have the ability to do a link to get your download. You'll get a link to your keys as well. So you can click on that and it will say, here's your key for that particular product, whatever it happens to be. And then your activations are handled with the key. So if you are new to Microsoft and you do not have an Office 365 or an M365 portal, you will have to create one just to purchase a Windows Server license, as an example. That's because that's where they live. That's where they're going to be sold. To creating a tenant doesn't cost you anything, especially if you're buying a license like this. If you already have a Microsoft 365 presence with subscriptions, it's just going to show up on your tenant in the area that I pointed out, the billing your products area from that perspective. So that's a huge change for a lot of people. When that first came out, even we were confused for a little while because Microsoft did such a poor job of explaining how that process works, where you go to get your software, all those kinds of things from that standpoint. And again, that's another reason that we're kind of having this little webinar here to kind of help you understand some of the changes that have happened and how it might affect you and where things get done from. Software assurance, if you're a customer that actually purchased software assurance, that can still be purchased. It's purchased through something called an open value program. And the open value program is really only open to government, education, 501c3 nonprofits. Those are the folks that can do that. If you're purchasing any other licensing or subscriptions via Microsoft 365, you basically already have software assurance. So if during your term, Microsoft comes out with a later release of the Office package, you're entitled to that Office package as part of the term that you have. So that's kind of software assurance built in to the subscription model, hence the reason that they don't really need to keep bringing that around for those kinds of products because it's already built in. Anyway, so things to, again, remember here, any perpetual licenses that are purchased, you have to go get them through your Microsoft 365 Admin Center. You have to go into the billings and your products area. That's where your downloads will come into play. If you're doing that through CSP, we can certainly help you to get to those items. Typically, that's how it would happen mostly with cloud service providers today anyway. And then the last thing that I'll mention is if you're purchasing your licenses through a cloud service provider today, and you're looking to go to a new cloud service provider, there is no process to move your licenses between cloud service providers today within the term of your licenses. So you're on the hook for paying out that license for the period of time that you have with that particular cloud service provider. That's good and it's bad. It's good for cloud service providers. It's bad if you're looking to make a change. So if QCM, for instance, doesn't do a very good job for you and you want to go to another cloud service provider, there are a couple of options that you still do have. One is you let your cloud service provider know that you're making that change, which is good. And then they should go and turn off auto renewal for your license subscription. And if you do owe any money that you haven't paid for, you can true up with them. And then they're out of the picture. You can go to your new CSP and you purchase the licenses to begin when your existing term license ends. So there's going to be some timing that you have to pay attention to from that perspective. I have talked with Microsoft about this a number of times already. They are working to try to figure out a way to maybe have a back-end transfer process, but there's nothing official that's out there on the subscription licenses yet. However, there are ways to do that if you have Azure licensing. So if you have an Azure instance today and you're purchasing that through a cloud service provider, there is the ability to move the billing component of Azure from a one cloud service provider to another through a backend transfer method. So you can pick that up anytime during your terms and move it from one CSP to another for Azure only. That's why I feel eventually Microsoft will get this figured out for the other subscription licenses because they've already done it for the Azure side. I feel that that's something that will come to play at some point in time. It makes it really difficult for A, the customer, and B, the folks that you're either moving from and moving to at the same time. It's just a lot of unneeded challenges, that should be easier. Unlike in the older days, we would just cancel prorate and then start you up with your new licenses and everybody's happy from that perspective. So that's the way it goes. Okay. Last one here is to say thank you for taking some time, and whoever's running the mute, if they would open this up, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to talk to you about any of the questions that you might have. And if it's something that I cannot answer, I'll take some notes and we'll get an answer back for you. As always, QCM thanks you for your business and for your time listening to us. If you have any specific questions that you don't want to air over the webinar, that's perfectly fine. Just reach out to your account executive, Tim Kennerup or myself, and we're happy to sit down and talk to you about these options and any other situations that you might have as well. All right. Any questions that we have out there?
So, Stephen, I'll let you take a breath. Thank you for that. And thank, again, as you have, for all the attendees. And I have unmuted it, so I believe we have the process to be able to let you ask your questions. If it gets a little awkward, of course, no problem. Just wait and we'll go one at a time. And I will mention at this time, if you did tune in late, just send an email, as Stephen has mentioned, to myself or one of your QCM contacts, to your favorite tech, your rep, your account manager, your customer success manager, somebody. And Zona Brandt will follow up with a link to this recording so that you could hear it again. We do not have the slides available, but we do have the recording available so you could take your time at looking through it and clip and get any of the information that you wanted. So without further ado, if you have any questions, we'll let you go ahead and ask them of Stephen.
Yep. All right, Trent, thank you very much.
Hey guys, so I have a lot of customers that are currently on their own tenant. And I was just curious, some of these changes you're talking about, when are they being implemented? And the only reason I'm asking is because right now it seems, and maybe I didn't catch it or something, but most of my customers, they agree to a year term and I can add and remove licenses as needed. And they're all business standard licenses for the most part, or Exchange Online type of licenses.
Yeah.
So I
So
guess
this started in March of last year. So if they had a long term that you already had and you're on the legacy, like if you're purchasing them through Disty or something like that, and you're on legacy, they'll let you stay on legacy for a period of time, and then legacy goes away. So if you're currently doing that, you probably should look at NCE and get that set up for these folks and talk about all these different strategies that I went over with them to get their licensing changed, because the legacy is no longer. So if your terms end and Microsoft feels like they want to just tell you no, they do not have to renew any of the legacy ones. You will renew under NCE. So pay attention to that. You also might be paying the monthly and pay it maybe a little higher price too. So you'd have to go look in the portal and see what it says about the subscription licensing for those.
thank you.
Yeah, I'll throw out one other thing here, and I didn't really say this so much, but one of the reasons that we QCM talked about doing this is because Microsoft, as much as we love their products and things like that, they're not without fault either. They're a huge marketing organization, but they did not do a very good job of marketing the license changes that I just went over. It took a lot of work for us to understand all of these changes, what that really means to our customer base and to ourselves and things like that. And that's one of the reasons that we felt it was important for us to take a few minutes of time to kind of explain these items to you guys in a way that you can, maybe understand, hopefully, versus going and sifting through, hundreds of blogs and all those kinds of things that are out there from that perspective. So, other questions? Wow, I did a really good job, I guess, or everybody's shy, one or the other. So I'm good either way. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and we'll give you back a few minutes. As always, QCM thanks you. And if there's anything that we can follow up with you on or you need from us, just reach out to the appropriate QCM resource, and we will help you get situated. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Stephen.
Stephen.